Hi folks, Marty here, and today we're going to do a little painting, and this was something that was requested by one of my students, and that we do silver birch trees by a lake in winter with snow. So today I'm going to attempt to do something like that. So first of all, it's a case of finding where your horizon line is going to be, and I normally work from a third up or a third down. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to maybe have the water coming across like this. So this is going to be like the bank, and this is going to be the water in this area here. And then maybe I'll have so I've done this at a bit of an angle rather than having it straight on. And then maybe have the horizon line maybe round about here. Just a rough guide, and then I'll maybe have the trees maybe sitting back about here. And this is just to give me a rough guide of where I'm going to place these. And then maybe one down here. Just kind of maybe leading out of the picture. One beside it. And then maybe one back here. To put a bit of a bend in these here, just adds a wee bit of interest to it. I'm sketching these out a little bit heavier, just so as you can see this on camera. But normally I would do that very, very lightly, so as I'm not kind of bound by it. And then maybe you could throw a couple of wee trees in the back here. And they don't even have to be the same as the ones that are in the forefront here. They can be just little impressions. So it's winter, so the sun's going to be lower in the sky. So I'm going to work with maybe here, have the shadow coming this way, or maybe even down a bit. Yeah, have it about here. So it means that the trees are going to cast their shadows from here. And don't forget, the bank's kind of coming down, so you want to give it the impression that, so that the shadow's kind of bending around the bank of that there. So I think something like that. Okay, so maybe some trees in the background here. And because they're in the distance and it is winter, you want them to be nice and soft. I think something like that will do. I just want this to appear that's just the water's edge here. So what you've got to do now is you've got to think of your reflections on the water. Is it going to be, if it's going to be an icy lake, you still want maybe some reflections there. So you're just bringing that down, and then you're just thinking about how it's curving. So keep it nice and light. It's just a wee indicator to you where to cast that shadow. And then this one's going to bend away, so think of how it would look in a mirror. And then starting on this side, and this one's bending out the way. in the way. It doesn't have to be exact, but try and get as close as you can. Just going to move that over a little bit, so it's kind of coming like that. And then this one's sat back a bit, so it's kind of a bit of an unusual shape, this one. So it's kind of coming like that. Down this way. Okay, and then these trees in the distance, they're too far back to cast any kind of reflection or shadow. We can get a bit more detailed as we go along. Okay, so that's the drawing or the sketch in stage, just to give me a wee bit of an indicator. So what I want to do is I want to just check those pencil drawings in the reflection there and make sure that one's a bit too bent there, so I want to straighten that up. Better to do all this at this stage than to be trying to correct it later after you put the paint on. Maybe straighten that one up as well there. Okay, I think we'll work with that. So there's a couple of ways to tackle this. One is you can just go ahead and paint the sky and just bring it on down, and then you can go along and then lift the paint off where the silver birch is going to be. Or you can mask it out with masking fluid, and then just paint away at your sky whatever way you like there, and then come back later, rub the masking fluid out, and then paint away. Or if you wanted, you could put a little bit of masking fluid down the parts that are going to be in shadow, and then when it comes to actually painting the trees, you can take the masking fluid out, and then at least you've protected and preserved some of the whites. So what I'll do is I'll not put masking fluid on just in case you don't have that, and I wouldn't want anything to hold you back from the actual painting. But it's definitely something worth thinking about for this kind of thing. So I'll just paint on through the trees and then try to lift it out as best I can. Okay, so in my palette I have some dirty paint that was left over from a previous project, and I'm just going to keep that because I'll use that. And I have some grey blue colour over here. I'll use that as well. So in this clean well, what I'll do is I'll get my blue sky colour. So I'm going to throw in a bit of cobalt blue and a bit of ultramarine. It's good to get into the habit of, if you're using two jars to work from, have one for really dirty water and then have the other one for dipping into clean water. This will help to make your paintings look nice and fresh and clean. But it's not always easy to do. Sometimes you forget and you get a bit carried away, and which is fine as well. It's just, if you want to keep your paintings really clean and fresh looking, it's a good way to do that. But when you get into the flow of things, sometimes all these good intentions go out the window. Alright, so in this well here, what I'm going to do is mix up my warm colour. I always like to put a wee bit of warmth into the sky. So I'll grab a bit of that yellow ochre, and you could use raw sienna as well. It will do the job. Maybe warm that up a wee tad with a drop of the light red, which is my Colour, it almost looks like terracotta. Okay, so this one, I'm going to try this wet into wet. I normally do this wet on dry, but I want to get a nice soft effect. So I'm just going to slightly damp that. Don't want too much water on it, or your paper will begin to coggle too much and it's harder to keep control. So I'm using the lamps of the studio here just to watch how it reflects onto the paper. That gives me a good idea of how damp it is. Okay, so start off with my sky up here. What I might do is throw a wee drop of that dirty stuff in there, and that'll give me a nice impression that it's just a rough wintry sky. Okay, and then I'll go into my warm colour now and just drop that across the sky there like that. Maybe a wee bit more in like that. Maybe with a wee bit more of the light red as it goes into the down towards the horizon. Okay, what I might do is throw a wee bit stronger colour into the top of that. Don't want it too washed out looking, just like that. And just let that blend in there. Okay, so what I want to do is just soften this up here. And I'm keeping an eye on this because I don't want it to be completely dry on me. Because I want to drop my trees in while this is still damp, but I've just got to wait a wee second. What I'm going to do is I'm just going to use a tissue just to sweep that across there, just to take off any excess water. And I'm just sitting watching this at the moment, making sure it doesn't get too dry on me before I start dropping in some of my tree colour in the background there. It's all about watching how it's drying. Okay, if I tilt my board, you'll see that that is still quite wet by the sheen on it, hopefully. Okay, so I want that to be a wee bit drier than that before I start doing anything. And I'm looking at my horizon line here, and I'm trying to keep an eye on this here because I don't want that to run too much. Because I want to create the sense of there's snow right below this horizon line. And I'm just watching the middle here. It's starting to pull a wee bit. So what I'm going to do is just touch it with a dry brush, just to mop up any excess stuff. Okay, so while that's doing that, I'm going to mix up a colour from my trees. So I'm going to grab a bit of blue there, put a bit of yellow ochre into it. So I'm just going between those two colours, cobalt and ultramarine, and then throwing in a bit of yellow ochre, or else it'll be too blue on me. But I don't want it. I don't want it to be too yellowy either, too greeny. Okay. So what I'm going to do now, I'm going to turn my board upside down. And it's trying to get the height right here. So I've lifted my board and I've put a wee bit of tape underneath it, a roll of tape that is. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to just start dropping in these trees like this. And because that's still damp, it should run down there for me. And if you can avoid those trees, that would be helpful as well. So what I might do is throw a little bit of purple into that, or alizarin crimson. That would work well with this combination of colours. just to give a wee bit of variety. And then down at the base of those trees, you put a wee bit more of that in there. Because the sky's still damp, you're getting that nice soft effect there. And that helps to make it look like it's all in the distance. Okay, I'm happy with that. So, clean my brush off. And then I'm going to turn this up the right way again. And there you see it. You get these nice, soft, diffused trees in the distance. And what I'm going to do now is I'm going to get one of my other brushes and I'm going to start lifting off some of that paint. So make sure the brush is nice and clean and just drag it down where those trees are, like that. Make sure it's not too wet or it'll start bleeding into your sky. And it doesn't have to be pure white, it just needs to be a little bit softer. Because the silver birch aren't going to look white anyway up there, they're going to be reflecting what's around them. And they'll probably be more like a silvery grey colour anyway, hence the name. Okay, and then just dragging it down. And what I'll do here is I'll just use my tissue just to mop up the paint that I have dragged down from the top like that. And then I'm just going to tidy up things here. Okay, so you'll want this to be nice and soft here, so I'm going in with some clean water. I'm just softening up the bottoms of those. What that means is when I come along then with some of the bluey colour, it should go over that nicely. So keep it nice and soft there, right. And I'm just going to dry that off now. Okay, so that's the sky done and the soft trees in the background. So what I want to do now is concentrate on the bank here. If I was to do the trees first, then I'm going to have to paint around them. And it's going to get messy because you'll start rubbing up the paint that's on the trees. And the paint will activate again and start bleeding into your water. So you're better doing that first and then coming back later with the silver birch trees. It'll be more straightforward. So what we want here is a bit of a light bluey colour with a wee bit of your alizarin crimson ready to go. So because I've kept this nice and soft here, what I could do is I could put a drop of water across here so that when I put the banks on here, you're not going to get a hard edge, and that's the thing you're always fighting against. So if I soften this up with a wee bit of water and then I start dropping the colour in, it should blend for me. Okay, so you don't want this to be too wet. So just a wee quick scoot across like that, right? And then you're into your blue paint. And it's a very watered down colour at that. If we drop alizarin in there, and then I'm just going to sweep across like that. Maybe go in a wee bit darker here. Okay, so that's indicating the distance there. So what I want to do now is just drop some here and there. So it's all hit and miss, it's all a bit broken. And you can put a wee drop of alizarin in there, here and there. So what I'm doing now is I'm just cleaning off my brush and I'm just softening up some of those areas here. You can even use a bit of a tissue. And it's areas where maybe the light is breaking through. Just think it needs a wee bit more work in that distant part there. So it's almost like shadow where the trees are. And then where the snowbank meets the water's edge, you can make that a wee bit stronger there. Just showing that it's kind of in shadow. Like that. Okay. What I might just do is just paint in some trees here. And I'll just give the indication that you know, there's different layers and different levels of trees. Ones in the distance are very diffuse, and then the ones here are a bit closer up. Okay, that helps a bit. And then a wee bit across here for shadow. So I'm getting a better effect there, I think. And I'm just sweeping up any excess water that's flowing down there. Okay, I think I'll work with that. And what I can do is just, you know, soften up these bits around the edges here. Okay, I'll dry that off now. So I'm here sitting in my studio at the moment. I'm just watching the hail and the trying to snow outside, which is interesting when you're doing a scene like this. So what we've got here is some hard lines. We could soften it up a bit with a wee bit of damp water, just in case it gives us issues when we're actually working on the tree. So what I'm doing, I'm not going right down the bottom, just that hard edge there. Okay, looks much better. So I'm happy with that. What I want to do now is I'm thinking of the water now, and obviously the water is going to be reflecting the sky. If you think of this lighter bit that's going across here, so we want that lighter bit to be about here, and then as the sky gets darker we'll want that to be reflected, and maybe do it a bit darker down this bottom end, and then we can come along later and drop in some reflections of the trees. That's one way you can do it. So you can work on that next and just bring it down. That will be your whole kind of underwash. So again, what I'm going to do is just give out a wee drop of water there across it. And then I might go into some of this purpley colour here. That was made up from cobalt blue and alizarin crimson. Okay, just drop that across there like that. This is going to be nice and soft. It's not going to be like your, it's not going to be like your snowbank, where you could get away with, you know, hit and miss technique, you know. And then make that a bit softer in the middle here. And then I'm going to put a bit of a darker colour in here. What I'm just doing is increasing the ratio. Okay, drop it in, maybe a wee bit more blue. Okay, and just up that bank is there, I'll just drop a wee bit of that darker stuff in there as well. Maybe what I'll do is just a sweep across here. You can even do it with a tissue just to give you that distinction there. What I'm going to do now, since that's still wet here, I'm going to go in with a bit of a, I'm just going to grab one of my darker colours here, and just a wee bit over here, just to let that soak down, to make it look like it is shadow. And then we can come back later and just work on that bank a bit. So what I'm going to do is, while that's still a bit damp there, I'm going to put the shadow in. Just going to drop it in like this. That's why you need to put in the just the pencil marks there, or you'd get lost here and you'll end up having trees that are just bearing no relation to the thing that they're meant to be reflecting. What I'm going to do is just grab a wee bit of darker colour there, a wee bit of, just to create a wee bit of variety in that. So because that's damp, it'll bleed nice and soft. So I'm just going to let that bleed in there a wee bit. And then while it's all damp, what I'm going to do is I'm going to get a damp brush. And then what I want to do is I want to drag a line across that, like that. And what that does, it makes it look like there's movement in the water. And we can come back later on if we need to do any further work there. In fact, what I'll do is I'll put a little bit more blue in the bottom there. And I'll just dry that off now. Okay, so that's the water taken care of, just kept really simple there. Okay, at this stage I'm going to look at how to do the silver birch trees. So I'm going to use an old card, and the way I do this is I want some pretty thick paint for this. So you could use your browns, and if you have a black colour or a neutral tint or a burnt umber, anything like that, it's kind of strong, and you can paint it onto your card like this. So nice and gentle. Don't be dragging it too hard. If you do too much, just go in with a bit of rag there. Just always trying to get this as dry as you can, this mixture, so it's really creamy. And then what I'm going to do is down the bottom here, down near the base of the tree, I'm just going to do it on a bit more blocked in. And by the time we're putting our shadow on, this is going to blend in with it. Okay. Just going to go into the roots of those and just block that in a bit. And don't be feeling that you need to fill in where you've put your pencil in. That's just a guide. So you can use your brush as well if you need to just do a wee bit of dragging there. So if you want to do a wee bit of dry brush work, just load it up with some of that dry mixture, and you can just drag your brush across like this here. So what we can do is we can grab some of that bluey grey colour, and we can just put a wee drop out down the side here that's in shadow. I'll dry that off first and then I'll do that actually. So it's a grey blue colour we're using there, and then we're going to just we're just going to run that down the side of the tree that's in shadow there. Okay. And you don't want to be brushing too hard against the dark stuff you put on, or it'll start to rub it up and give you a bit of a messy look. Okay, and I will dry that off quickly. Okay, so that's my main trees in, and they're just floating in the air and they don't look real, but don't worry, when we start to put the shadow in, that'll all start to make sense. So what I'm going to do at this stage, I'm going to start putting in a wee bit of detailed work, okay? I'm going to put in some fine branches, and for that I am going to use my rigger. I'm going to use two riggers actually. I'm going to use one that's a bit thicker. It's a number 3, but this one here started out as a number 3, and then I just took a blade and just went around the edges of it just to thin it down. So it takes both of them really to give you what you need in terms of thickness. Okay, so these silver birch, they're going to have wee fine branches. So the branches normally come out of a bit of where it's a bit dark here. It's kind of where those come out like this. And then maybe one coming out of here. Let's try not to overdo the thing, you know. This is where I switch to the thinner rigger here. So this is basically just our detailing part of the work, or trees. This tree's a wee bit kind of wonky looking, so I'm going to thicken it out here. It's sort of went run it with the paint that kind of missed bits of it, so I'm going to thicken that up a little bit like that. Just to take that bad look of it. Okay, it's a case of not going too overboard with that. So there's a lot of bits that you put on down the bottom here, but I think you're better leaving it until you have the shadow on, because if you put them on now and then you start dropping the shadow in, the water or the paint will start to lift them up. And what I'll also do is maybe some of these wee thinner, I'm going to put some wee thinner trees in here and there in the background. I'll maybe leave them to a bit later on, put the shadows in now, but come back and put them in a wee bit later. Okay, so this is the part that normally just helps to pull the whole thing together and make sense of it. So we're going to mix up our shadowy colour, which is your cobalt blue and alizarin crimson. Just kind of working with the ratio there until you get something you're happy with, and making sure you have enough of it. And don't be afraid to have that shadow looking a bit warmer. Okay, so here we go. We'll start with this tree in the foreground here. And don't be a slave to the pencil. You can just kind of go with the flow as you're going. That's the shadow of that one at the back there. Okay, obviously when they get to the water, you know, they're not going to be running onto the water. That's that one. And then so what you can do here is you can rub up into that tree there, and that just helps to soften the whole thing and just make it blend a wee bit more. So you're using the paint of the tree that's already there. So I'm just kind of softening it and then dragging the paint out onto my shadow colour like that. Okay, so I'm just going to move on to a thinner brush here, and I'm going to pretend that there's other trees here as well that you can't see in the picture, but their shadows are there all the same. And then some of these wee trees here, I'm going to put the shadow in before I even paint the trees. Okay, I'm just going to lighten that up a wee bit, and then what I'm going to do is I'm going to put a wee bit of darker stuff around this bank's edge. Going to go into some of that dark stuff and then just touch the bottom of that. And that'll bleed up into that colour I just put on there. Okay, see the way this is it's just bleeding up into that. It makes it look like there's snow there, but it's in shadow. And if you need to, just use a tissue just to soften anything up if it's too harsh. Now's the time to do that. Okay, so I'm going to go into my rigger again, and I'm going to put in a few wee trees here and there. Back to my wee fine rigger, and then I'm just going to pull out a few wee branches. Get some stronger pigment in here. Okay, at this stage what you want to do is then drag up some bits of wee reeds and branches and okay, we're getting there. What I'm going to do is just get a drop of this here stuff and then just bring it down here as if you can see the bottoms of those trees reflecting a wee bit better. Just soften it up with a wee tissue there. I think we need a bit more shadow here, down with the water. I'll dry that off now. So I'm just looking at this and I'm thinking this here area here, I think we need to darken that down a bit. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to just lay some water over that like that. Hopefully it'll help to soften it all up a bit, and I'm just going to put a darker colour across that. Try that off. Okay, so this is the fun part of it. This is where we get to plaster everything in little drops of white paint. So make sure if there's anything precious sitting around to cover it up. That includes the cat, by the way. Okay, so here we go. Get your wee dish handy. Get some of your gouache white paint. You can either just use your brush to put the water in, or use a spray if you want to kind of control it a bit better. Make sure you have a good clean brush. And then just water that down, or mix it in with the water you've put in. And make sure there's not too much on the brush, okay? And then just gentle taps, like this here. So try not to go too overboard with this. You don't want to plaster the thing and then cover up all your hard work underneath. And where you're going to see this snow really is around those dark parts. What you could do at this point is just get some of that paint there, and then just maybe just put little bits where the branches meet with the tree, like that. But don't overdo it again. And pull out a few white branches here and there. Okay, but don't overdo it. I will dry that off now. So if you want at this stage, you want to put a wee bit of life into your picture, you could put a few wee birds in. Just get your finest brush. Just some wee bits of detailing like that really help. And here's another tip: always have your birds flying into the scene. Don't have them flying out of it. Just never seems to look right. There you go. So all's left for me to do now is pop on my signature, and I'm just going to use a nice bright colour just to brighten that picture up a wee bit there. Okay, so the only thing left to do now after popping my signature on is to remove the tip. And there you have it, and there's my take on snowscape with silver birch beside the water. So have a wee go at that, and you'll soon get the hang of it. And keep those brushes going until I see you next time. Take it easy.